The iPhone 16 is finally here, and it comes jam-packed with new features that you will never use, like the all-new camera called the 48 megapixel Fusion camera, and a new button dedicated to taking pictures, like every other iPhone couldn't already do that. But anyway, today we're going to be taking a deep dive into these new iPhones, showing you the little details that Apple didn't talk about at their event to help you decide if you should get the iPhone 16. First, Apple Intelligence. This is the biggest new feature across the iPhone 16 lineup, and might as well be the biggest new feature to iPhone in a long time. It'll make iPhone more useful than ever before, with writing tools, call and mail summaries, and so much more. And most of all, Siri will no longer be stupid. This is the big selling point of the iPhone 16. It's quite literally the tagline for the entire iPhone lineup. But when you get your hands on the 16 at launch, this big AI feature that Apple's heavily advertising won't even be available on your shiny new iPhone. They've delayed the feature to a software update that's coming later this fall, and even then, it will still be in beta. Furthermore, you don't even have to get the iPhone 16 to have Apple Intelligence. The iPhone 15 Pro will receive most, if not all of these Apple Intelligence features this fall as well, the same time the iPhone 16 gets them. So if you already have the 15 Pro, like I do, there isn't really a point to get the new iPhone, unless you want to be the first to get your hands on the iPhone 16's stunning new design. Yep, that's what Apple said at the event.
iPhone 16 Pro has a stunning new design.
Obviously, the 16 Pro looks exactly the same as the 15 Pro, so this design is not new at all. Unless you get the shiny new desert titanium color, the 16 Pro is virtually indistinguishable from the 15 Pro, apart from that new button on the side, which we'll talk about later, or the bigger display. The displays this year, specifically on the 16 Pro, are the largest they've ever been, at 6.3 and 6.9 inches, up from 6.1 and 6.7 inches. The regular 16 models though keep the same display sizes as last year. Now you may think that this means that the new phones are much bigger than before, but as it turns out, they really aren't. When you compare the 16 Pro and 16 Pro Max to their counterpart from last year, they're only a millimeter wider and 3 millimeters taller. But only a sicko would upgrade from the 15 Pro to the 16 Pro, so let's compare it with an older phone. When you compare the 13 Pro Max and 16 Pro Max, which is the latest you should be upgrading from anyway, the 16 Pro Max is actually slightly narrower than the 13 Pro Max, even with a bigger display. And although the Pro models this year are heavier than last year, 12 more grams on the Pro and 6 more on the Pro Max, they're still lighter than the stainless steel Pro phones that came before them. On the other hand, the regular 16 models this year actually look better than the Pros in my opinion, with this new vertical camera layout akin to the old iPhone X, and these colors, which I think are actually the best set they've had for a while. The 15 last year had these pastel-y muted colors, but now we're getting more vibrant ones that pop. Apple finally found more ink this year, which I like. Now about those cameras. Apple is marketing the main sensor on all iPhone 16 models as this new 48 megapixel fusion lens. But it's all a lie. This fusion lens is the exact same lens that they've used since the 14 Pro, just with a different name, which is kinda dumb. It even takes the same smart HDR5 from last year's iPhone 15, so this new camera isn't as new as you may think. All the camera lenses this year though now have an anti-reflective coating, which should help with picture quality. The regular 16 got more love this year, with it finally getting some features that only the Pro had before, like the action button, macro photography, and spatial photos and videos. Still no ProMotion display though, but now that screen is not only stronger than ever before, but it also dims down to 1 nit, which is actually more important than you may think. You know those times when it's pitch black dark in your room and you put your phone at minimum brightness and it's still too bright? Well, now with that 1 nit minimum, you can use your phone in the dark more comfortably, which also further preserves battery life. Talking about battery life, the entire iPhone lineup this year got bigger batteries, but Apple never really told us at the event exactly how much more battery life these new iPhones will get. Well, now we know, because I digged through Apple's website for you. The 16 gets 2 more hours than before, and the 16 Plus gets 1 more hour than before. But the big jump goes to the Pro models, with both Pro and Pro Max getting 4 more hours of battery life than last year. That's a welcome change, especially for the smaller Pro, since last year it notoriously had the worst battery life out of any iPhone 15 model, and the Pro Max on the other hand now gets the longest battery life ever on an iPhone. Powering these bigger batteries requires faster charging, and Apple didn't disappoint with that this year. They've upped the MagSafe charging speed from 15 to 25 watts, so charging will be nearly 70% faster than before. But that also means that you're gonna need a faster charging adapter, which of course is sold separately. If you don't already have one, Apple sells a 35-watt adapter, and it costs a whole $59. And the MagSafe charger itself is also sold separately, costing $39 for the 1-meter version, and a new 2-meter version costing $49. If you want to charge your new iPhone 16 as fast as possible with the longest cable, you're gonna shell out over $100 more on top of the already expensive new phone purchase. $799 for the 16, $899 for the 16 Plus, $999 for the 16 Pro, and $1199 for the 16 Pro Max. What's interesting about these prices is that they cost exactly the same as last year, with the same exact configuration. So that means the 16 Pro still starts at 128GB of storage, with only the Pro Max continuing to get that base 256 configuration. It was rumored that Apple would ditch the 128 on the regular 16 Pro, which would have effectively pushed the price higher on the base model, but nope, Apple kept the same exact prices and configurations as last year. Oh, and I forgot to mention, all iPhone 16 models now support 45-watt USB-C fast charging. That's nearly double the speed as last year's models, so now it's finally on par with Android fast charging speeds. But again, that means you're gonna need to buy an even faster and more expensive power adapter. Now back to those cameras. The brand new feature this year, other than Apple Intelligence, is that new capture button, aka camera control. This new button on the side is not just a regular button, it's also touch and pressure sensitive. So you can use it to do all types of things like zooming in, adjusting exposure, depth of field, and more. And third-party apps will be able to utilize this new button, like Snapchat and Instagram. Now this has the potential to be a game changer, but when I look at the action button on my 15 Pro, I've barely even used it, so hopefully this new button doesn't end up like that one. But again, like Apple Intelligence, Apple isn't even giving us full functionality of this button at launch. They're saving an extra feature to lock focus and exposure with a 2-stage shutter for later, which is really dumb to be honest. Why advertise a new feature on your already barely new product when it won't even be available at launch? Apple's done it before, and there's no doubt that they'll do it again. But all that aside, it's great that the regular iPhone got more love this year, with it getting new features that we'd expect only the Pro to get at first. I think most people are better off getting the regular 16 instead of the 16 Pro this year. Still no promotion though, Apple's saving that for the iPhone 19. Oh, and speaking of the 16 Pro, it now gets that 5x telephoto lens that was exclusive to the 15 Pro Max last year. So now you don't have to get the Pro Max to get the best camera. Both Pro and Pro Max have the exact same camera system, which is great. It's a new year and it's a new iPhone. But just like every other year, the new iPhone is only an incremental upgrade from the last. Sure, there's faster A18 chips, higher resolution lenses, new video capabilities like 4K 120, and new buttons that just make your shiny new phone more complicated to use. But we're no longer in the age where you have to upgrade your smartphone every year. iPhones have looked and felt the same for years now, not like it was a decade ago, where people would upgrade their phone every 2 years, since every year the new phone would be vastly different from the previous generation. And it's not just Apple, this goes for other smartphone companies too. If you have an iPhone 15 or iPhone 14, please do not buy the iPhone 16. If you have an iPhone 13, maybe. But if your phone is working just fine, just keep it. Back then, carriers would offer 24-month financing options before you could pay off your phone. But now, at least in the US, most offer them for longer periods of time, in my case, 36 months. Which all goes to show that smartphone innovation has plateaued, and people aren't getting new phones as often as they used to. This is the #1 thing that Apple isn't telling us, that you don't have to buy the new iPhone. Because I won't, will you?